Hey, Benediction, what up? Sorry for the shitty lighting. These are my living quarters now, and the videos aren't coming out the way I really want them to. We just got bad lighting, and it's all awful. But I appreciate you checking out my videos anyway. What is a suyere? Let's go back. If you see my last video, what is an oriki? Oriki is just to recap, oriki is a praise poem used to flatter and thus entice the ache of a specific orisha to be present during any given moment. For example, when a person gets a regular reading with a santero, the shells of elegua are used. Thus, the oriki of elegua is recited. If the shells of a santero's guardian orisha, in my case, Obatala, if my Obatala shells are used, then the oriki of Obatala is used. For more information and details, and I get into a lot better detail, please check out the whole video on my channel. If you scroll down, you'll see it. So that's oriki. Now, what is a suyere? You'll hear the word iyere or suyere. The most common one that I've heard is suyere. The actual translation for that word, I do not know. I do not have. If there's anybody who does know, please let me know in the comments below. What is a suyere? A suyere is a series of lukumi words that are spoken but usually chanted and sung while, and this is the key part, while performing a specific action. And usually outside of that specific action being performed, you will not hear it being chanted. The exception to the rule is some suyeres you'll also hear in some songs for the Orisha. So of course I'm going to give you guys examples. An example of a spoken suyere with no melody. I have heard it with melody, but for the most part it's not sung with melody or recited with melody. So this suyere is after an animal is sacrificed, fresh clean water is poured over the orisha. The suyere that is often heard is eroero ko isoero, eroero ko isoero, or eroiro ko isoero. And you'll see the person, they'll have, I don't know, if I got like a cup here, and then imagine this was a hikara, and you got the birds on the floor and whatnot, you have the orisha, and they go inside, ero ko isoero. That's it. Ero ko isoero, and they're pouring water. But notice it's just spoken. That specific suyere speaks of the fruit of iroko being blessings of peace and the mercy of Olodumare, yada yada. But that's just one example of a suyere. It's spoken. It's very simple. It's outside of pouring water over an animal after animal sacrifice, or pouring water after animal sacrifice. This suyere is never heard anywhere else. The whole omi tutu ana tutu ache tutu ile tutu tutu laroye tutu ariku babawa, that is not applicable here, because that suyere or adura or prayer of the orisha should have already been recited earlier when the orisha was given obi, before any animal was sacrificed in the first place. So I'm assuming maybe some of you were thinking, well, I thought the prayer for when you give water is omi tutu ana tutu. That should have already been done. So this is a suyere eroero ko isoero, or eroiro ko isoero, for when pouring water over the orisha, to the orisha, libation of fresh water after animal sacrifice. Second example, some suyeres are orisha specific and are only chanted when the proper parameters are met. Specific circumstances are met. These circumstances or these parameters can be when lifting a specific orisha off the floor, when a specific orisha is mounted on the earth and is sung to be lifted off the floor. These parameters can be when just a super duper specific action is being performed. And of course, I'm going to give examples. An example of when lifting, just specific orisha suyeres. Orisha specific suyeres, pardon me. When pouring honey to any orisha, you may chant the following suyere. We've all heard baraila witoni o baraila witoni o domamaila witoni o domamaila witoni. Of course, you're going to hear variations of that same one. So that's when pouring honey on an orisha, usually after an animal has been sacrificed to it. But the one exception to that rule is when pouring honey to Ochun, who is the owner of honey. So Ochun gets her own specific Suyere, which denotes her status as the owner of this specific substance. So when giving honey to any Orisha, Barailawitonyi o Barailawitonyi, Odomamailawitonyi, Odomamailawitonyi. When giving honey to Ochun, Yeye moro iki, Yeye moro iki, Sekure alaido iki, Yeye moro onyabe, Sekure yalode, Onyabe, Sekure ololodi, Onyabe, Sekure ibuanya, Onyabe. And you can say different caminos, different paths of Ochun. So Ochun gets her very own Suyere for this specific substance and this specific action. In addition, this specific Suyere that I just recited is also a song, or orin, orisha. Orin meaning songs. There are a lot of times you'll hear the word canto, the canto for Ochun, canto de santo, orin. So you'll probably recognize this specific Suyere when you listen to Ochun music on YouTube. Yeye moro iki, Yeye moro iki, Sekure alaido iki, Yeye moro onyabe. That's not just a Suyere, but it's also a song for Ochun that you will hear at a tambor. So some Suyeres can be sung to the Orisha as a specific Suyere, but also when praising that Orisha at a tambor. But this is not the case for all Suyeres, like the one I sang earlier, Eroero Koisuero, or like Barailawitonio, the chant with honey. These are not chants or Suyeres that you will ever hear at a tambor. Why? Because Suyeres are action-specific chants. And to sing a song, to chant Eroero Koisuero or Barailawitonio is simply not applicable, because at a tambor, no one's getting honey. No one is getting, there's no animal sacrifice to be putting drops of water to be singing Eroero Koisuero. Another example of an Orisha-specific Suyere. When lifting Obatala, the sopera of Obatala, off of the floor, and I'm purposely picking very common ones that you will hear. When lifting an Obatala sopera off of the floor, you will hear Baba dide o didema, Obatala dide o didema, Aropolo o aropolese, dide o didema. When lifting Obatala off of the floor, usually after feeding Obatala. This song is sung only for Obatala. This same exact Suyere is sung at a tambor, or can be sung at a tambor, but only when Obatala himself or herself has fully mounted a person and prostrates to the drums or the trono, depending on whether it's an anya or a bembe. There are people today, myself included, until I learned better, who use this Suyere to lift all the Orisha off of the floor. For example, you'll hear people say Elegwa dide o didema, or Ogun dide o didema, Ochun dide o didema. This is incorrect, as this is an Obatala exclusive Suyere. And even Ochun has her own specific one, you have to say, when lifting off the floor. Yemaya has her own, Chango has her own, Asohano has his own, and I believe Orishaoko has his own. Everybody else, Ago dide. With permission, I lift you. But that is an Orisha specific Suyere. And that same one, Baba dide o didema, you will also hear that. I've definitely heard it on you look up Cantos de Obatala, Canto Obatala, and you hear it on albums. You'll hear it on songs. But that is a specific action is being done. Baba dide, Father, arise. Father, get up. So when are you going to recite that Suyere? When you are lifting Baba, Father, off of the ground. Whether he's mounted on a person, he's on the ground prostrating, he's getting off of the ground. Get up. When you feed Obatala and you get him off the ground or her off the ground, get up. That's what it speaks of. A final example of Suyeres exclusive to specific actions. There are tons and tons of Suyeres. There are Suyeres for when you light a candle. There's a Suyere for when you rogate someone's head. There's a Suyere for every single action when you rogate someone's head. There's Suyeres for everything. But I'm just giving, I'm trying to get the ones that I think are the best examples of what I'm trying to convey here with this video. A final example of Suyerés exclusive to specific actions is during the matanzas. I'm not going to recite the entire thing, but we've all heard yaquiña loro, bara yaquiña loro, bara yaquiña yawese loro, bara yawese loro, bara yawese. During the yaquiña loro part, you'll often see people grabbing their neck. That is, you go to a tambor or anywhere else, there is zero time where you ever see anybody doing this. It just represents you don't want to be like that animal. You don't want to get your head chopped off. So it's like what comes to mind is the knock on wood. May this not happen to me. But at no point is this ever performed anywhere else. So that's a specific action to the specific chant that's being said. It continues on. Ogun shoro shoro. At that moment that the words Ogun shoro shoro are uttered is the moment that the knife actually does any penetration to the neck of the animal. I bring up this specific Suyeré because it is an extreme example of just how specific and precise a Suyeré can be. When it comes to the matanzas, there are even more very, very precise Suyerés for very precise actions, details of which I'm not going to get into. But at no point in the yaquiña loro, I mean, there are people that do it, where they sacrifice an animal, they just cut the head off, bada bing, bada boom, that's it. But at no other point in the entire, because it goes on, yaquiña loro, and it goes all the way down to all the different Suyerés. There's a Suyeré from the very beginning. Okay, then Ogun shoro shoro. That's when the knife is doing its job. And then, okay, now the blood is falling. There's another Suyeré after that. For very specific moments in time during the matanzas. And this is across the board. Very, very specific actions being performed. Let's see. But there's a separate Suyeré for when sacrificing a bird. There's a separate Suyeré for plucking the feathers. There's a separate Suyeré for pouring the feathers over the orisha. All of which are chants that you will never hear outside of that specific context of animal sacrifice. So you will never hear any of what I just recited. Yaquiña loro, ogun choro choro, and none of that you will ever hear outside of the context of animal sacrifice. Why? Because those Suyerés are not applicable to anything else that we do in this entire religion. Unless you are sacrificing an animal, there is no need to ever hear or chant yaquiña loro. There is no, I'm going to recite, I want to praise Allah, so I'm just going to recite this random Suyeré. I'm going to recite yaquiña loro to Obatala. I'm going to recite baray la witonio to Obatala. If I'm not pouring honey on Obatala, there is no need for me to recite baray la witonio. If I'm not pouring water on Obatala after animal sacrifice, there is no need for me to recite eroeroko isoero. It's not applicable. So you can't just take any Suyeré that you like and throw it around. Continuing on. Interestingly, even some animals have very specific Suyerés that are recited when sacrificed. Details of which I'm not going to get into. But I'm just trying to give you guys an understanding that there are Suyerés for everything. Most of everything that we do has a corresponding Suyeré. So within the context of we're talking about matanzas, of animal sacrifice, it's not enough to just memorize the single yaquiña loro prayer or Suyeré for every single sacrifice, animal sacrifice, because even that would be incorrect. Let's move on. All Suyerés tell of the background of the action, or the background of the animal, or the odu in which this action is being performed, or the odu in which it's born in, or it has metaphors in it, or it refers to a patakin, or it refers to general praises to that orisha. These Suyerés, some of them are just, for lack of a better term, weird or don't seem to make sense. Like how going back, eroeroko isoero, or eroeroko isoero, for pouring water over an orisha. There is zero mention of the word water. At no point, when I'm pouring water, eroeroko isoero, there is no mention of omitutu. So there's zero mention of water, even though the action itself is pouring water, because water brings ero. Ero is calmness, peace. Well, alafia is peace. So ero is calm. So that's suyere. That's the suyere for when pouring water after animal sacrifice. It speaks of calmness. So there's zero mention of water. That's just one example. And then another example is Baray lawito niyo, dumamay lawito ni. I've heard a translation where it speaks of how okra is jealous of honey. Ila, okra, oni, honey, and how the suyere is speaking. So if I'm pouring honey on a watala after giving him 2 pigeons, the suyere that you're reciting, at least in that specific translation, speaks of how okra is jealous of honey, because even though they both share similar viscosities, because they're both slimy and they're liquidy, slimy, but people will always choose honey over okra, and okra is jealous of honey. What that has to do with anything that has to do with honey, or what it has to do with anything, I have no idea. So the literal translations of a lot of these, some of them they make complete sense, some of them that's just the way things are, and that's what it is. Let's continue. There are, the last point I want to make, there are things where suyeres are lengthy, like for when a future yawo has their ebo entrada, a person's ebo entrada, it's something that's done right before a person gets crowned. There's this long, not a reading, but it's ebo entrada. You could look it up. The ebo entrada is performed, and there are loads of prayer chants. There's loads of oriki. There's loads of suyeres that the santero or the babalao has to have memorized, and there's physical actions associated with each suyere and each separate odu, and some suyeres are quick and easy, like ero iroko iso ero, simple to the point. We're giving water, ero iroko iso ero. And then some suyeres, like was the only one that I have memorized, that's only within the context during ebo entrada, when the person is like reciting off different odus, and there's different suyeres and different actions associated with that suyere, like different physical actions. So it's a lot. It really, really is a lot. And being able to memorize all that, it's a task. But again, just going and just paying attention when you do go to places. So that is it. I don't want to make this too long-winded. It's already 18 minutes long. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you learned anything new or different, let me know your guys' perspective, or maybe you have a different translations for anything that I've said here, or if you've seen anything that was to the contrary. Maybe something's different in your lineage or in your house, that, oh no, we don't sing that when we give honey to Ochun. We give this when we give honey to Ochun. Whatever. Okay? El Conquistador, over and out. Ki oloro nagbeo.